In today's video, we're going to be talking about the Xbox Series X, specifically focusing on the name of this console, because it seems that Microsoft had to come out and give us a little bit of clarification as to why the console is named the Xbox Series X, what it really means, and what it means for the future of Xbox consoles as well. So we are going to discuss that for a little bit, but we're also going to be talking about how PlayStation is looking to hire somebody for a new role that they're creating within the PlayStation division, and it seems like a very significant role. Whoever they do hire for this position, one of the things they're going to be doing is overseeing which studios Sony is going to be acquiring going forward, and it does also imply that Sony is going to be looking to acquire maybe quite a bit more studios going into next generation. It's certainly something that they are going to be pursuing more heavily, and so I really wanted to just take some time to talk about that. But starting here with the Xbox Series X, says that the name we're carrying forward to the next generation is simply Xbox, a Microsoft representative told Business Insider. And at the Game Awards, you saw that name come to life through the Xbox Series X. Like the first Xbox generation, the next one is simply named Xbox. It's a basic rebranding, but a meaningful one that could help to simplify the Xbox line for interested consumers. It also clarifies Microsoft's intention with its console line. Similar to what fans have seen with previous generations, the name Xbox Series X allows room for additional consoles in the future, the Microsoft rep told us. So this is actually pretty interesting. I'd say the most interesting thing here is how Microsoft seemingly just flat out confirms, yeah, we're going to be having more Xbox consoles coming sooner rather than later. I can't say this as a surprise, but to me it does kind of low-key confirm that Lockhart is in fact a real thing. It's something that I think Microsoft is saving to reveal sometime next year as a big surprise, but it also tells you that maybe they could be planning to do more than just the Xbox Series X and whatever Lockhart ends up being called. I guess we would assume the Xbox Series S. But it's also interesting that they're trying to rebrand it here, right? And I don't think this is the best way to go about doing it. I say that because if you're trying to do a slight rebrand, the idea is you want to separate what your rebrand is, in this case the Xbox Series X, from the Xbox One, which was clearly something they're trying to get away from, understandably so. And, I mean, they're going to be supporting it, but once they start marketing with the Xbox series of consoles, they're not going to be talking about the Xbox One at all. But I feel like the only real mistake they made here, because I'm not a big fan of the name, but the thing that really stands out to me is the fact that they called it Xbox Series X. That X at the end, in my opinion, is really unnecessary and redundant, and in my opinion does a very good job in definitely confusing some people. I think out of all the things that Microsoft did with this new naming convention, if there's anything that's going to confuse people, it's that. You can't really confuse Xbox One and Xbox Series. But what you can confuse is both of them having X at the end of their name. That right there is what causes the confusion. And I'm not saying that everybody's sitting here baffled and confused over this, because they're not. The truth is, most people who are actually interested in the Xbox Series X probably won't be confused. But if you've ever worked in retail, if you have any experience whatsoever in retail, you'll know that the average consumer, the people who don't really pay that close attention to this, they get confused very easily when it comes to naming and next generation stuff. And there's a lot of people who don't want to believe this. There's a lot of people who make it seem like if you get confused by this at all, you're a complete moron. And I feel like that's a little bit unfair, because I can tell you right now that even just me talking about this new console, I want to keep saying Xbox One X. Maybe that's just because that's what I've been saying for so long, but I don't know. To me, it just seems like it's going to be something that will potentially confuse the average consumer who goes out there looking to buy Microsoft's new console, especially if they do the same thing with Lockhart. If Lockhart does end up being a real thing, we can assume they'll call it the Xbox Series S. And again, putting that S at the end there, I don't think that's a good idea. I I don't know. That's just my personal opinion. Maybe I'm off the mark. I'm not saying I'm confused, and I'm not saying it's the most confusing thing in the world. But to sit here and think that they could have named it absolutely anything, it didn't even have to. It's not even a matter of originality, right? Like, it doesn't have to be original, but they could have named it anything. And if they were really trying to rebrand it, call it the Xbox Series, I don't know, Z or something, right? Like, at least it's different. It doesn't make you think Xbox One X, Xbox Series X, right? That's just my opinion. But what's interesting here is that they're letting us know to expect more consoles, Xbox consoles going into next generation that'll stand alongside the Series X, and they're letting us know that it's just called Xbox. Apparently, it is a rebranding or a small rebranding of sorts. And yeah, I guess that is what it is. But moving on from that, talking about this new hire, it says that Sony is hiring a new head of strategy for worldwide studios. Job listing indicates new hire would be overseeing growth. So it says, according to a new job listing, Sony is seeking a new head of strategy for Sony Worldwide Studios. This new hire would be responsible for overseeing growth from 2020 through 2024 while identifying market trends to react to and planning any mergers and acquisitions. So let me reread that part. It says, basically, from 2020 through to 2024, this individual will be identifying market trends to react to and planning any mergers and acquisitions. So definitely a big deal there with this role. The head of strategy would also be collaborating with leaders of the different Sony Worldwide Studios while reporting directly to the head of Worldwide Studios, which is Herman Hulst. So yeah, this is a very interesting job listing here because whoever they do end up hiring, this is going to be a significant role within PlayStation, and it's going to have a huge impact on what we end up seeing in terms of growth from Sony's first party going into next generation. The two things I'm interested in here are, the fact that they want this individual to focus on trends so that they can be able to react to those market trends in a timely manner. That one's going to be interesting to pay attention to. And obviously, talking about mergers and acquisitions, this is one we're really going to want to pay attention to as well, because the only studio we know of that Sony has acquired is Insomniac Games, and there's no doubt that was an absolutely huge one. And it was quite a surprise because you just didn't see it coming. But at the same time, we know how close Sony and Insomniac have been over the years, and so it kind of just makes a lot of sense that it's finally the way it is right now, right? I think the big question that a lot of people are going to have going into next generation, which what this tells me is that Sony clearly has some big plans for more mergers and more acquisitions. What we're going to be interested in finding out is who exactly is Sony going to acquire? Who else are they going to bring on as a first-party studio? For a lot of you who watched my video yesterday, you know that we talked about Hideo Kojima paying a visit kind of randomly to Insomniac Games, the newest studio that Sony has acquired, and I kind of maybe speculated very heavily that could this be a subtle hint that Sony is trying to pursue Kojima Productions and trying to convince Kojima to come on board as a first party? Maybe, maybe not. We really won't know until we hear something about it, and we might not hear anything at all about it. But the point is, this is clearly indication that Sony has some big plans about acquiring more studios going into next generation. I'm also wondering, talking about studio acquisitions, will Sony be willing to build some more studios from the ground up? I think there's a big difference between cultivating a new studio. It's a huge undertaking, obviously. It's not easy. It seems like what Sony is doing is actually kind of just growing their current teams, like making sure there's an A team, a B team. I don't like calling it that because it makes it sound like the B team is less, than the A team. But what I mean is like Team 1 and Team 2. I believe almost every major Sony first-party studio kind of has this going on right now. We know that Guerrilla Games has 2 teams, maybe more than that. We know that Naughty Dog has 2 teams, and I'm sure that Sony Santa Monica does. And, as these studios grow, it's kind of makes sense to do that rather than just making a whole nother studio. But yeah, I'm going to be really interested to see who fills this role, who they hire, and it's going to be very interesting to pay attention to what decisions they end up making, who they end up looking to try to acquire. But what this tells me is that going into next generation with the PS5, we can certainly expect some more studio acquisitions from Sony. I think they're far from done. That's just my opinion or my take on, this position that they're hiring for. So that's going to do it for the video, guys. I'm going to ask you at this point to be sure to leave the video a like if you did enjoy it, if you found it informative. Really helps it out, lets me know you guys enjoy the content. Be sure to subscribe to the channel as well. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Hit the bell notification icon so you never miss an upload, and feel free to share this video out on top of all that. But until next time, guys, take care.